Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of alignful.com. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Okay, guys, this week I have a killer interview with Huey. But before I tell you that, I just want to remind you, it is not too late to join the 4-day free challenge that is going on right now. So if you're ready to use your inner voice to break the patterns of stress, overwhelm, and anxiety and finally start feeling grounded, connected, and at ease at any moment, then this challenge is for you. You'll really be able to turn down the external noise of your mind, of other people's expectations, and really turn up your intuition and your inner voice. We just had day 2 of the challenge. Wednesday is day 3, but here's the cool thing. When you register at alignful.com/challenge, and the link is in the show notes, you will get immediate access to the recordings. So every day we have like a special little place where you'll get a login link and you can log in and you can access day 1, 2, 3. You'll be able to access all of the recordings for every day. And it's not just the video recording. So you have the video recordings, you have an audio only recording, and you have a transcript plus like the key takeaways and the overview from that day. So you'll register at alignful.com/challenge and you'll get an email that invites you to log in. And when you log in, you'll get access to the replays and it has everything in there. It's so nice. I made it as easy as I possibly could for you. And then, of course, it's happening on Instagram Live. So you can go to Instagram. Dana_Evans is my Instagram handle if you're not already following me. And then on my feed, but also in my Instagram TV section, I have the replays as well. So I want you to just be able to access this and use it and take advantage of this awesome kind of groundbreaking information that you're getting from the challenge. So if you join, I would love to hear. Let me know. Tag me on Instagram. Share it with your friends. And this is a massive transformation that you're stepping into and creating for yourself. So that's that. And this week's episode is with my friend. She's also a James Wedmore coach with me. Her name is Huey. And she's amazing. She helps aspiring business owners establish their foundation and get visible. She helps them connect all the dots between their ideas, develop a plan, and take action on what most matters now. I have worked with Katie. She helped me a lot with my membership, the Tuning In membership, with really getting the plan and outline of how I'm going to present all of this information that I have in a very logical way that you can use and implement on a daily basis. So she really helped me set that up. And she's so great with messaging and market research and graphic design. She's very talented. She's very wise. She's an old soul like I am. And she's also an Enneagram 7. She's an INTJ. And it's really wonderful for her to share her story of she is a member of the Tuning In membership. And she's also done a deep dive inner voice session with me. So she has a lot of experience with this. But what she shares in the episode is how this was not something that she was naturally drawn to. She wasn't, in the woo closet and super into this stuff. She's very logical. She's an anthropologist, guys, by trade. I mean, that's what she studied. And she really found this work organically and has really leveraged it and shown up for herself in a really big time of massive transformation. You'll find in the episode like how she used her inner guidance to decide to move to a new state and what she's done now that she's pregnant and really taking advantage of her own inner guidance to show up for herself, right? She was a big people pleaser. And now she's like really not just about pleasing herself. It's not really about that. It's about honoring her needs in any given moment. And she shares her whole story, and it's such a wonderful listen. I can't recommend it enough. It is an hour, so you can listen to it in 2 chunks or just do it while you're driving or cleaning up the house or cooking your meals for the week. Whatever it is, I just hope you listen to it. And as always, please share it with anyone that you think could benefit from this work as well. So I will see you next week, but remember, you can still join the challenge at alignful.com/challenge. Without further ado, here's this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. This week, as I mentioned on the intro, we have the most lovely, special, amazing guest, my friend and fellow coach. Her name is Katie Huey, and she is here to wow you guys with her prose, because I think she speaks very, eloquently. It always feels like she's telling this like lovely story. So 1, you just get to listen to her. But 2, she's going to share a little bit about her experience with 1, she's in the Tuning In membership, and she's been a loyal member and has had some pretty awesome experiences. She's also done a deep inner voice session with me. And she's one of the people who, I'm telling you guys, Katie, when she kind of latches onto something, she like gets into it. So she's been really important with me figuring out how we're really talking about this inner voice work and how, we explain it to other people and how we work it into our lives, because she's very good at analyzing. She's an INTJ and very different way of thinking than I am. Yet we're both Enneagram 7s. I'll just tell you that. So you're going to get the peppy, really fun conversation from us. But she's here to really offer you all a different perspective of how she, as a very analytical INTJ thinker questioner, has been able to not just like work her inner voice into her life, but really to use it to guide her through some pretty big decisions in life. And we will talk about those as well. So Katie, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you, Dana. I'm so happy to be here. No pressure.
No pressure at all. I mean, that was just a casual intro.
I'm so honored.
So we'll just kick it off. Will you tell us just a little bit about like you and your kind of way of thinking and how you came to this inner voice, intuition type work, and like where you were beforehand and what sparked curiosity for you around this stuff?
Oh, yeah. So I think it's good to start with the fact that like I'm an anthropology degree. So I've always been very methodical in the way that I approach basically anything. I have like a scientific process to my life. I definitely try to think about things in a holistic way and also what makes the most sense. And throughout the years, it actually made me a little jaded, a little bit of we're all just a bunch of monkeys on a rock, it's all coincidence kind of person. And it was unfulfilling, for one. And there were a lot of big life decisions that I needed to make and was making and didn't realize all of the factors at play. I thought it was just me putting things on a spreadsheet and making the most logical decision. And things just always happened to work out for the best. And of course, that was because I did the data analysis, right? And I moved out to Colorado with my husband. And it was one of the most transformative experiences of my life, because I moved to one of the crunchiest, most woo-woo communities I've ever experienced. And at first I was like, whoa, guys, like I don't fit in here. And the more that I was able to release and hear other people's stories and almost like immerse myself in the culture, if you will, the more I was intrigued by it, the more that I was open to it, and the more I wanted to experiment in it. And it really wasn't until I became a coach with James Wedmore and I met Dana Evans and went on my first date with you, Dana.
We had
I
the
was like,
best
wow, like
dates.
it was. We've gone on so many dates. We had this great ritual on Pearl Street, and it's all the conversations I would have with Dana and how drawn I was to that calm confidence of just like owning who she was, saying yes to plans she truly wanted, you truly wanted, and saying no to the things that you didn't. And kind of reconciling the fact that I was such a people pleaser and being like, whoa, I didn't realize I was living my life based on expectations of others. If I'm the anthropologist, I'm a very clinical person. If I explored this side of myself, then what would people think? And it wasn't until I met you, Dana, that I threw that out the window and finally explored another side of myself that had been lurking there all along. And I didn't realize was there until I had joined the membership and was awakened to these parts of myself that had always been poking at me, had always been kind of waving, saying, please acknowledge me. It wasn't until this that I finally did. And it finally opened up a new era of decision making for me that was so out of my normal past character, but also one of the most expansive, transformative, and fulfilling ways that I could go through my life.
And I'll just say that was beautiful. You being also there to witness that transformation with you was so cool because, I met you once you'd already been living in Boulder for a while. And so you had already gone through part of the transformation. But as we got to know each other and I got to know more about, I talk on this podcast a lot about like versions of yourself. So I got to know a previous version of Katie from your stories. I'm like, what? You were like that? But then even in the short period of time that we both lived in Colorado and got to spend time together each week, it was like, oh my gosh, your transformation and your shift from, outside in to inside out was really huge. And it's almost like you took this information and you're like, yes, this is for me. And you just ran with it. It was like no looking back.
It really was. And you just kind of brought up something for me, the outside in to inside out. I think that is seriously the most powerful part of this is what I was doing before was collecting all this outside information, putting it into a spreadsheet, like not even kidding. My husband and I had a spreadsheet of where we were going to move for him for law school. And I was taking all this outside stimulus to make decisions that were going to internally affect me for a very long time. And you were there for that transformation of that inside out, where it was me collecting the stimulus that I was feeling inside and making an outward decision that didn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of people all the time, but eventually made more sense and gave me more peace. Because my transition to Colorado was not easy. And it was because I made it based on outside stimulus versus what I truly felt was good.
Oh my gosh. And that, man, you just hit on such a big point because that is what we do. We collect, even unconsciously, even the non-anthropologists of us, which are maybe most of us. But, we're trained early on to collect data and then fit the data and fit it to our life. So it's like, well, this is what it means to be healthy. This is what it means to be fit. This is what it means to be a good person. This is what it means to be a good friend, a good partner. And we look at all of that outside information and then we filter it through our mind. And then we're like, okay, so that means this is how I need to act. These are the decisions I need to make. This is how I should feel. This is what my life should look like. And that's how people end up looking at their life and be like, how did I get here? Versus looking at their life and saying, I created this. And the only way you can truly create it is if you're operating from that inside of, what is my body telling me? What is it communicating with me? Even if I don't understand the why or the how, what is showing up, and can I trust myself enough to follow that? Because then I'm following the only true north that there really is, which is my internal guidance system. And then those decisions really start to like little breadcrumbs, right, be put together, and you look back and you're like, wow, how cool was it that I trusted this nudge and I followed this weird decision that no one thought made any sense. And I realized that it's because I was following it for myself, not to prove anything or show others anything, right? Or to fit into a box that other people want me to fit into, that I was able to create the life that I wanted, and a life that I'm excited about and proud of, not just, getting by checking the boxes.
Oh, yes, that gives me absolute chills because it's true. We spend so much of our lives, seeking advice and borrowing ideas and experiences from others to therefore filter through our brain and create our own experiences, when we kind of need to flip it on its head, literally, and go from the inside, filter through our brains to craft our reality. It's all relative and it's all
That just gave me chills. Katie's the messaging queen, guys. The number of times you have no idea, you don't have any idea, I don't have any idea. The number of times I've gone to Katie, be like, let's present it this way. And she's like, I hear what you're saying. And here's what I'm actually getting that I think you actually want to say. And I'm like, yeah, that.
I love it. We have hours of voice messages between each other about messaging.
We do, yeah, because we record our conversations because there's so much good stuff that comes out of them. Find yourself a friend that will voice memo record your conversations, because your conversations are so powerful and so insightful that you don't want to forget anything that you say.
And it's so great because it's also so empowered by both of our inner voices, because both of us have mastered this. Like, we just say what we want unapologetically, unfiltered. And then both of us come back like, oh my gosh, Dana's inner voice. That was one of the most amazing insights I've ever experienced. It's a beautiful thing. Get yourself a friend who is also in on this journey.
Exactly. Yes. And then you can ride the wave together, and it's so much more fun, guys. It's so much more fun to not be the black sheep and to get in on this stuff, because Katie, so we'll go into this a little bit, talking about like the breadcrumbs, how it's leading you. You've had some pretty crazy transformations in literally the last, just this year, the last 6 months. And that's also when you were really getting into this inner voice work and following and trusting your inner guidance. So let's talk a little bit about first what it means for you to actually trust that. And then we can kind of talk about how trusting that has kind of led you to where you are.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So what it means for me to trust that, it meant for me to let go of what I had previously considered reality. This idea of everything being a coincidence, of just binary choices, and learning to trust. I didn't realize how much I didn't trust myself, although there was a part of myself that was guiding me all along. Like, how offensive am I to myself that I was listening to something I didn't realize I was listening to, and then chalking it all up to oh, thank you, Zach, for that amazing insight. Now I can make this decision based off of what you said, without realizing that there was a part of me that led me to that conversation in the first place and opened me to receiving the information and processing it in my own way. So I just needed to suspend my disbelief and open myself to a new way of being. And when I truly did that, it was one of the most peaceful transitions of my life, one of the most peaceful expansions. I mean, peaceful in that it was massively uncomfortable at first because it was a new way of being, but the result was so peaceful.
Yeah, and that's a really good explanation. In fact, a lot of people who I've done inner voice sessions with have talked about this, where it was challenging in a different way, not the way that our minds are used to challenges, because we're used to physical work and effort to get what we want and to figure things, right? It's I have to figure it out. I have to think about it. When someone asks you to make a decision, you're like, let me think about it. And then you sit down and you think and you make all of the pros and cons list and you analyze and you figure it out. It's a very different experience of really going from that place of active work to, yeah, it's uncomfortable because we're going against what we've been trained to do since we were young, of like, this is how you make decisions. This is how you go about your life. This is how you make transitions. And so it's very uncomfortable and sometimes a little awkward, but ultimately it's more going downstream, right? With the flow of life versus fighting against it.
Oh, for sure. And we kind of touched on this in a conversation we had last week where our entire educational career is based on like the next step. And the next step is kind of laid out for us. And we're taught to think in a very specific way. And me specifically in like a social science career, it was very like, okay, collect the data, process, and make a decision. And then when I graduated, there was no obvious next step. And there really wasn't much for me to collect to make a sound, what I considered at the time, next decision. I had not developed a skill to move forward in a way that was right for me or that was in touch with my intuition. I didn't even know how to like spell intuition at that point in my life. I was just completely devoid of this other way of being and this other way of living my life and this other way of moving through the progression of my life, because it was like grades 1 through 12. And then if you were going on to higher education, here's what that looked like. And when I graduated, there was no map. And no one ever told me that I could write my own. I could trust my own, that there was a map in me. And I had no way of accessing it until I moved to Colorado and met all my crunchy friends and eventually crossed paths with Dana Evans. And now here I am.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You gave me chills again. Yeah. Making your own map, because gosh, you totally nailed that. And when you mentioned that to me the other day, it's like, if we look at our lives, they are so basically scheduled and set out for us until we're, 22. And then it's like at that point, though, you've usually gotten the job that you're supposed to get that has to do with a degree that you were supposed to get, that has to do with the college that your parents wanted you to go to because society says you're better if you go to college. And it's this crazy thing where all of a sudden you're living on your own, you're doing this life and you're checking all the boxes. And if you have the luxury to actually pause and reflect, you might be like, hold on, is this what I really want? Like, who am I living for? And what does this mean? And what do I want to create going forward? Or do I just want to keep following the well-worn path that everyone else does because it's what everyone else does, because no one bothers to really consider and ask, what do I want? Because we think that's not okay, because that's selfish, right? So there's this whole storyline that unfolds, and it leads a lot of people, right? And this is really what I think about, because I went through it as well, is we hit that kind of quarter life crisis between 25 and like 32 of, holy crap, what am I doing with my life? And I feel like it's coming a little sooner now for kids these days. But, like you said, is you didn't realize that you could actually trust on yourself, because that's not what you were taught. You were taught to follow a path. And then when the path is kind of removed, the clear one at least, it's like, well, crap, what do I do? And that's where you really started to question and, ask yourself these hard questions, that's the most important thing, right? That you were willing to ask the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And those questions bring up some pretty scary like responses from yourself, because then you're like, well, that's different than what everybody else is doing. And if that's different, what are people going to think? And what will my family think? And what will I tell people? Will people take me seriously? And it just brings up this whole, like you're describing, quarter life crisis. Even though on some level, my inner voice that I didn't know existed at the time was telling me, screaming to me, you are meant for more. You are meant for something different than this. And that's okay. In fact, that's beautiful. But I was so wrapped up in this just like pedantic march towards the next grade level that when there were no more grades to accomplish and no more years of schooling to accomplish and move on to, I just had absolutely no idea what to do.
Yeah. And then that's, the free fall. And then it's like, well, Katie, you could always get a master's. Or do you have your master's? I don't remember.
I don't have my master's because I had hit this point in my life where I was just like, I knew I was supposed to do something different. I always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum. I'm a very independent person, and I really value my freedom. And the thought of doing anything else that kind of took away that time freedom was just like, no, I can't do it. I tried to think about getting my master's, and just even the thought of studying for the GRE was just like, nope, this does not feel good. I don't want to do this. And no matter how hard I like pushed myself to like get materials or look into study courses, I could never commit. And I didn't really know why. I just couldn't. And then because of this narrative of, going to school and therefore you're better and you're worth more in society, I would feel immense guilt that I wasn't moving forward in some way. But really I was. It was just in my way.
Right. Because moving forward, even that was going through a filter of what it should look like. Because what happens to a lot of these people who, a lot of people want to pursue education for their own reasons, but a lot of people do. It's like, well, I don't know what's next. I want something more for myself. And if I want more for myself, that means I have to go back to school. And so I'm going to go back to school, go back to learning from other minds that only are part of the 5%, and go back to the well-known path because that's what feels the safest, right? And that's what I've been told to do.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because that was back to a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of embracing and stepping into that calling, right? The beauty is, like I talk about this all the time, but the beauty is, my friends, that even if you're not necessarily tapped into your inner voice, like even if you're not like, my inner voice type is the gut, my inner voice type is ether, whatever your inner voice type is, even if you're not present to that yet, but if you're going through my 4-day challenge right now, you will be present to it because we're talking about that right now. But you are still being guided. And the beauty of this is even the person who's the most disconnected and not paying attention is still being guided. And Katie, even though you weren't actively aware that at that time that you were being guided, guess what? Something was telling you both that you were meant for more and keeping you from getting, quote, more from the traditional sense of like doing your master's. And so that's the beauty of listening, is even if you're not necessarily paying attention to the inner voice, if you can start to just pay attention to the signs from your body, something's coming up. Like you were resisting that path and there was a reason.
100%. And I think back on these experiences in my life, and I've always been described as someone who is decisive, who knows what she wants, assertive, whatever you want to assign to me, who like I know what I want and I make decisions and I make them hard. I think back to these decisions in my life, like even down to my wedding dress, and how I didn't realize that my decision-making process was so rooted in my inner voice type. I just had nothing to connect it. I didn't even have the language to connect it, the awareness to know that that's what was going on. And then once I built that awareness, it was like the floodgates opened and it just expanded and evolved into this amazing part of my life, this amazing aspect of my life and how I move through life and experience life. And I didn't even know it was happening.
Yeah. Oh, and that's just, here's the deal. Your inner voice, all of our inner voices are dying to have the microphone. And they're so patient and they sit back and they're like, they hear the mind, they roll their eyes. They're like, oh, there goes the mind again. Chatter, 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 worry, 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 do, 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 work, 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 prove, prove, prove. And the inner voice is just waiting for the invitation. And like a projector from Human Design, that's me, guys. I'm always waiting for the invitation from someone to invite me to share my guidance with them, because I'm not meant to just jump in and, lecture people. So the inner voice is very similar. And when you say, okay, let's do this. Like, this is where Elizabeth Gilbert explains in Eat, Pray, Love, where she's like on the floor of her bathroom and she hears that message, right? An inner voice message, really. And that she decided in that moment nothing else was working and I'm going to pay attention. And when you make that decision, when you're like, okay, fine, I'm listening. I am here. I am listening. That is one of the mantras in the membership, right? We have a mantra every month because that invitation to the inner voice can really make a massive shift like you just described, Katie.
Yeah, that's where I started. I remember saying, I'm here, I am listening, and then having follow-up conversations with you. And I was like, what am I listening for? And we had like this conversation about it. And you were like, Katie, this is your type. And it blew my world wide open. Like I didn't even realize, like, I was like, I'm here, I'm listening. And I'm like waiting for like the voice of God to say, hello, I'm here. Like I just had no idea what I was even listening for. And when you broke it down for me in the membership, it was like, it blew my world wide open to this whole new way of being and existing. And then what became possible when I trusted, not only just like trusted the process, but trusted myself.
And what's your inner voice type, Katie?
It's the gut, my gut. I'm very, I feel it. I brought up my wedding dress a couple minutes ago, and it's little decisions like that in my life where I have always been someone who I know what I want. And when I went to go search for my wedding dress, I picked out the very first dress that I saw. And I was like, this fits the vision I had in my mind. Yes, this is the one. And then I went through 3 days of trying on dresses because I owed it to myself. And it was really fun, right? There's nothing better than trying on these gorgeous gowns. And I went with my very first decision. I felt it in my gut the moment that I saw it. And I've just always made decisions that way. Very like, this is what I want. I know it. I feel it. But let me explore all of my options so that I know that like I'm at least making, like I'm being a sound human being who's exploring every option available to me. But really, it was all just unnecessary because I already knew on some level. And it didn't hit me until literally I was on a hike with you, Dana, and telling, I was like, yeah, I get this like feeling in my gut. Like, I just know. And you're like, Katie, that's your inner voice. I was like, oh, wait, what? Like I had this like misconception that there was going to literally be a voice for me. And for me, beginning, it was definitely a feeling. And it was so strong. And I had just never connected that was my inner voice talking to me.
Yes. And so the gut type is very much, it's like yes or no. And it's in your gut. And it's just a very strong, grounded feeling of, and it also can happen really quickly. So that's Katie's type. Okay. Katie, and we can all have all the types of inner voices, just so you know, but we tend to have a primary one when we're just discovering it. So it's physical sensation, gut, heart, ether, and sound. So sound is the voice that you speak of, Katie. So my primary type is physical sensation. So since we're talking wedding dresses, let me tell you how I discovered my wedding dress. First of all, it didn't fit any of the visions that I had for my wedding dress. I had a mind idea of what I wanted my dress, and it was like crepe, really, like it looked like I was going to get married at the Four Seasons in New York. That's really what my dress was, like really smooth, thick fabric, tightly hugging, pure white, really clean lines. And so those were the dresses I tried on. On my second day, so I only did 2 days, my second day, I went back to retry on the dress that I thought that fit the box that I had made for myself. And I was just wandering around looking, and then I was drawn, like energetically drawn toward this one that had long sleeves, which I kind of had wanted, but I didn't know. It had long sleeves. And it was nothing, Katie, it was nothing like any of the dresses. It was all lace from head to toe. It was not like, there was no poof. It was, but it had like this big, beautiful train and this low cut back and long sleeves and this high chest. And I just saw it and I was like, whoa, something hit me. I just felt like warmth. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to try this on just for fun. I put the dress on. I walked out with my mom and I looked in the mirror and I burst into tears. And so did my mom.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, wow, this is the one. And then I tried the other one on that was like the one that checked the boxes, and it was like, I didn't feel. And so that's mine. Like, it's just this really strong physical sensation. Of course, the dress was out of budget and it didn't make sense. And I was like, this can't be the dress. This wasn't what I imagined. And so just if you guys listen to the two very different descriptions of Katie knew what she imagined, she went for it and she saw it and found it and knew, but then she tried on. I had what I imagined, and then I went back and found something that I was drawn to, and then realized that was the one. So you can see that by using your type, you can really feel into your decisions. And both of us, had gorgeous dresses that were amazing. I'm obsessed with my dress. I'm never giving it away. So obsessed.
Hearing the description of what you imagined yourself in, I'm like, really? Because I cannot imagine you in any other dress. Like, I saw your beautiful wedding pictures, and just like how it encapsulated your free spirit and how beautiful it was and how beautiful you were in it. And I'm just like, wait, I can't imagine you in anything less like free spirited.
Yeah, it was very like Taylor Swifty, the dress.
It's so Taylor Swifty, and I'm a Swifty. So
and Beyonce.
From the bottom of my heart, it is very Taylor Swift.
It was Taylor Swift plus Beyonce, because it was very form-fitting and was sheer and had like a mini skirt underneath, which gave me my Beyonce flair. But I totally wore like a crown. But the point being, now we're like wedding dress. I haven't shared that story with anybody. So thanks for bringing up dresses. That's really fun to hear the difference.
Yeah.
The other types are heart, ether, which is like where you get like a download, and then sound, where you actually hear words. But it's so cool to really experience like how your type informs your own ability to make decisions and to trust yourself. Because like if Katie thinks that in order to connect to her inner voice, she has to hear words, and she's saying, I'm here, I'm listening, and she's waiting for her inner voice to say, Katie, we love you, you're perfect, which it did, by the way, when we did the inner voice session. But that's a whole nother thing. They all can speak to you or speak through you. But if she's listening for words and her type is gut, she's not going to connect to it. It's just like the love language. It's like if Katie's love language is acts of service and mine is words of affirmation, if every time I see Katie, I like tell her how great she is, I'm sure she'll appreciate it. But you know what she'd really appreciate is for me to say, hey, Katie, I'm going to come pick you up and pick out a hike and take you on a hike. She would probably appreciate that more than me saying, Katie, thanks so much for planning the hike for us. You're awesome.
And like on that same vein too, because I talk about love languages a lot with my family members, is that it is also entirely possible that you have more than one and you have no idea. And it's a matter of connecting with the one that is the most natural to open up the possibility of connecting with the others. And in the case of love language, it's like, oh man, quality time and gift giving, right? I identify more with spending quality time with people. But then every now and then I feel called to give a gift, and I show love in that way. And I was not open to that unless like I explored my other love languages. Like it's really interesting how the more you get to know yourself and the more you lean into what feels good, the more that opens up for you, and the more you can express yourself and the more you can connect with yourself in different ways.
Oh my gosh. So well said. And what she keeps saying is the more you can do it. Well, guess how we do it more? This is the whole reason why I created the Tuning In membership versus like a course or a program or even just the one-off inner voice sessions, because y'all, to use a Katie in Alabama term, we have been conditioned to not trust that, to dismiss the signs that everything is a coincidence, and to not trust our own inner guidance. And so it takes time and conditioning to retrain yourself to look inward, right? To shift that perspective of not mind first, but like heart first or gut first or whatever your type is. And it just takes time and practice. And it's so fun to do it through that membership model, because then it's like each month you get new exercises to practice it. And so where whereas you can kind of pick it up maybe relatively quickly to really integrate it into your life the way Katie has done so well. It takes consistency and the willingness to kind of keep questioning that status quo.
Totally. And my husband, Zach, for those who don't know him, the other day I was explaining emotions to him or my emotions around a particular issue to him. And
sorry, I'm laughing. I'm explaining emotions to my husband. That's what I have to do because my husband's an Enneagram 5. I'm like, here's how it feels to have feelings, honey.
Funny. I was like splitting hairs with my emotions where I was like, this frustrates me and I'm still very happy. And he just couldn't compute. He was just like, what do you mean? Because if this frustrates you, that means you're frustrated. When really it's like recognizing these different aspects and the multidimensional ways in which we feel things and understanding that it means nothing and still learning to trust myself because I made decisions based around this particular conversation from my gut. So it was like, yeah, when you make these decisions or when you use your inner voice to make a decision and you're truly at peace with it, it doesn't always mean that the transition is easy. There will be aspects that will frustrate you, and I'm still very at peace and happy with it because I know I made it for myself, from myself, and I can trust myself. And it was just such a mind-blowing conversation for him because he was just like, I'm just not that in touch with my emotions. I feel frustration, therefore I'm frustrated. I feel sad, therefore I'm sad, when really these things can exist together.
Ooh, girl, that is gold. That is so, I certainly couldn't have said it better. That is so beautiful because yes, it is, you can know that you've made a decision that is best going to serve you and your path, and you can still feel uncomfortable. You can still feel frustration, anger, sadness of letting go, right? I mean, letting go of something that you didn't want, but also knowing it's the best choice for your future joy. Of course, you can have those together. Like you, I mean, Katie, if you want to share a little bit about your decision, she no longer lives in Colorado and she decided to move, and I got to witness her feeling both like happy knowing she would made the right choice and sad leaving what she loves.
I feel like we've been dancing around this, and it is like, this was one of the most transformative decisions that like truly, it didn't make sense to everyone. I just knew it made sense to me. Like people, so yeah, I moved from Colorado that became my people. This place became my community. I really, truly came into my own in a whole new level of and way of being living in Colorado, because it was just a much more expansive environment where I was free to be who I wanted to be without any expectation or judgment from the like, overall community, right? Kind of describes the community as like my crunchy woo-woo friends. And I had never had crunchy woo-woo friends before. So I was really expanding this other way of being when I lived there. And then I made this decision that like kind of abruptly, I need to go home. I need to move back to Alabama. I'm originally from South Florida, but my husband's from Alabama. And so is like my mom's whole family tree. So it was like, it's always been home away from home for me. Got married here. I went to college here. And there was just this really intense, very sudden, it's time to go home. And I waited an entire year to make it happen. And I kind of went back to some old patterns of like, well, let me weigh the pros and cons. Like, what month should it be? When is the right time for me? Who am I going to hurt in this process? How can I make this easy for others in this process? Like, all of this thought, right? But I just knew in my gut I had to go. And I didn't know why, because it was just so sudden, and I loved my life in Colorado so much. And then I remember being on a walk with Zach, and we were walking our dog, and we weighed the option of staying in Colorado. He still works for the firm that he works for in Colorado. We had like this great setup, and things were looking great. And, if we just stayed a little bit longer, things would be even better. And we really considered for a moment, should we stay? Or at least another year, right? And the moment that I put that into like my filter and I started filtering it through my mind and my gut, because I'd been working with Dana for a bit by this point where we had this conversation, I had this just immediate sinking feeling, a resounding no, don't stay. It is time to go. It just didn't sit well with me. It didn't feel right. And then I thought about going home and what that would mean and, being near family and, the pros on the list. And I immediately felt lighter. Granted, moving home to Colorado or moving home to Alabama was such an unknown still because I am a different person than when I left. And Alabama isn't necessarily any different than when I left either. So it's kind of the same, but I am different. Will I fit in? Will I lose a part of myself? Will I stop developing? There were a lot of scary what ifs that ended up being completely bogus. But this is my ego trying to protect me and say, no, stay in your safe zone. And we did it. We moved. And it was a messy move. And it was it was right when the lockdowns were happening and we just had to get out and we just got home.
But I'm going to pause you for a second because after you made that decision, like truly decided, a bunch of things happened as well, which you don't have to describe, but just to share with everyone, like things were pushing her to leave, frankly.
Oh,
Once they finally agreed, like, okay, we're going to leave. And really before you even agreed that, circumstances kept kind of slapping Katie in the face of like, get out, you gotta leave. And then the pandemic hit.
And you're so right. Like I can't gloss over that. Like it was like slap in the face, go. And I kept pushing the move date back. It was like, okay, like we would love to go in January. January felt really right to us. Can't go in January. Maybe we'll look at the end of February. No, February doesn't feel right. And then March came. And we all know what happened in March. And it was like, okay, it's now or never.
And you were going to stay till June at one point.
Yes, we were going to stay till June. And that was like one of the worst feelings. And it was like not because I didn't love Colorado or I didn't love the springtime in Colorado. Like it's one of my favorite times, in fact. It was just like something was like, no, don't do it. So it would hit me in the face. Like quite literally slap me in the face with a circumstance or an altercation or a roadblock or a challenge that was just like, okay, universe. It was like this alignment of my subconscious and the universe. Like they were definitely holding hands saying, come with me, follow us, do this. And my ego was like, yeah, but moving's just a pain. So I'm just going to stay where I am. I'm going to stay in this circumstance because I technically have longer, when it was an undeniable force out of Colorado. And it started, and just like trusting my gut and knowing and recognizing and seeing these things line up. Because the more I trusted my gut, the more I was able to recognize these signs and recognize these challenges and recognize the universe trying to speak to me. It was so wild and then the pandemic hit and my husband and I got home, and full disclosure, we moved home because we wanted to buy a house, and we ended up buying a house in January, and we wanted to start a family. And we're like, okay, well, we can have this house, we can renovate it and make it what we want. And we ended up finding our absolute dream home, like a true manifestation. Like if anyone's ever like, have you ever manifested anything? I'm like, this house, definitely this house, down to the color on the walls. And like, we want to start a family, and we'll wait until like December because then we have time to renovate and then we'll feel ready. Right.
And the house, by the way, you bought sight unseen. Because you knew.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're right. Because I saw pictures online and in my gut, I was like, this is the one. And they wouldn't even let anyone look at it because they had some kind of like, I think it was like a leak or something. And so they were like doing some like minor renovations to it to fix the damage. And I just put it in an offer blind. I was just like, this is it. This is the one. We're putting in an offer. And my realtor thought I was absolutely nuts. Just thought I was crazy. And so the first time I saw it was actually, I think 2 weeks later, I flew down here. for the holidays, and we were doing our inspection. And we walk in for the very first time, and I see my dream floors. I see my dream color walls. The layout, it was better than I imagined because, there's only so much you can tell from pictures online. And my realtor looked at me and he's like, I've never had anyone do that. It's highly unusual. Good call. Good call. And since then, there hasn't been a house that's popped up that I've loved more or felt better about, or that has been a combination of all the things we needed. It was a true manifestation of what I wanted and what we needed, and trusting my gut when I saw it and taking action. It was really, really an insane experience, and opened my eyes once again to like what was possible when I trusted myself and I like leaned into manifestation and this like budding intuition that came with trusting my gut. And so the big climax of this story is that my husband and I moved home in March with these dreams of renovating this house and having a baby in December. And 2 weeks after we move home, we actually find out that we're already pregnant. And it just all came full circle for me. This extreme rush and need and push to get home. Because I could not imagine going through my first trimester in the situation that I was currently in. It's for anyone who is a mama, for all the mamas out there, we all know that the first trimester is really, really hard. And for me, at least, I won't push my experience onto you, but it can be very hard. I was just so tired. I could barely lift a pinky. I had no motivation. I thought I had mono before I found out I was pregnant. And it was just this like moment of everything coming together and making complete sense, even though I couldn't make sense of it before this happened. It was like the universe and my gut were telling me it is time to go home. There are all of these things that are going to happen in the world, the pandemic and the unrest and everything that could have prevented me from coming home in June. Really, you need to get home. You need to be with your family during this time. And I truly, again, I could not imagine going through those first 12 weeks, not being with my family, being stuck in the situation that I was in, and not having the support of the people who truly loved me and supported the decisions that I was making. It was just like, my mind was so blown, and I was immediately just filled with peace, knowing that because I was able to suspend my disbelief and learn to trust my gut, I was able to create this reality where I was in the most loving and supportive and cushy experience for one of the most like biggest upheavals and just biggest life changes I'll probably ever experience, becoming a first-time mom and during a pandemic. It was just incredible. It was just incredible to see the true fruits of cultivating this side of myself.
I am getting like smacked with chills and tears as you're describing that because I feel it so deeply for you. And just even flashing back to like really the last 6 months or the first 6 months, 4 months of the year were really this big, massive, full body, spirit, mind, relationship healing for you. And we get to look back. I seriously am going to cry right now. We get to look back at that and be like, all of this was preparing you for the baby.
What?
And to create life. And I mean, you can't plan this shit. Like we plan stuff like this all the time, but you can't, the magic of tuning in, of following the nudges, of being guided and trusting that there's something bigger that you're moving toward is just so much more profound and powerful and impactful than living in the small box of mind-based life and lists and pros and cons and expectations. Because you've had really the most beautiful, it certainly has not been without its challenges, but this year has just been this massive transformation, and it's all led you to where you are. And it had to be that way.
Oh my gosh, it really, really did. And you're right. Like we get to look back on it and say, oh, so this is what was happening. And at the time, it's not always that cut and dry. It's not always that crystal clear.
No, no, that's where the trust comes in.
That's where the trust comes in. But it always comes full circle. And just like a result of that is me leaning into it even more. Like when it was just so obvious that this is what was happening. When it finally all came full circle, I was like, oh, okay, this, I can truly say, not just like, okay, I get it, but I get it. I get it now. Like I truly trust this process and trust myself, because not only am I doing it, I'm experiencing it, but it's in front of me. It's happening. It's unfolding right now. And it's made me more aware of these like everyday ways that I'm trusting my gut, and how that's expanding me into, like we talked about love languages earlier, and how that's expanding me into new forms of an inner voice. How you can have more than one. And when you learn to trust them, they show up for you. If you show up for them, they show up for you.
Yeah, if you're willing to listen, you'll receive what you're wanting to listen for. And that, it's funny because what I teach in the membership is the trust is a really big thing. I mean, when I like talk to my audience and people that I work with, it's concerning, frankly, of this lack of trust in self, and even you don't even trust that you can trust yourself, like that's even possible. And it's alarming, and it saddens me because we're so powerful, we're so wise, we have so much inner knowing. As one of my inner voices that I've worked with they were very specific. They said knowing with a capital K. Okay, so that's the knowing from within versus the lowercase k is knowing from the mind, which is like you said, right? I get it versus I get it.
Yeah.
And this trust. So what I teach is in the membership, we have all these different practices and exercises to start small. Okay. And then you build up that trust. Well, Katie went big. Okay, guys. Katie started with the massive life transformations and found that trust, and now she's working it into her everyday life.
It was kind of one of those, like, it started with a small nudge saying, okay, well, I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust that. Okay, I'm going to move states and I'm going to have a baby. From
buy a house blind.
From 0 to 60. And I tell you what, like it can feel inspiring, and it can feel like opening up all of these possibilities. And at the time, people thought I was nuts. Had absolutely no idea why I was making these decisions. Couldn't really understand. Thought maybe I was forcing it. Was I really considering all of my options? All of this external feedback that, like, if I had actually gone back to my old patterns and taken that external feedback and then put it into a spreadsheet and weighed the pros and cons and ignored my gut, I would have been in a really bad situation. I would have been in a situation that was not right for me. And it would have made the experience of bringing a new life into this world with my husband that we are so thrilled about that much more stressful in the middle of a move, in the middle of a pandemic, living in a toxic environment when all I could do was sleep and basically drool on myself for the first 12 weeks, would have been even more stressful and hard. And I'm so grateful to know that, like, even when it didn't make sense to others, I knew that it made sense to me, and that was all that I needed.
Yes. And that, my friends, is the power. That is why we talk about tuning down the noise, both the noise of like the mind and all that chatter, and the external noise of other people, because other people are only sharing what they know through their limited perspective, through their lens. Mm-hmm. They can't actually know. They can share and share their experience, but ultimately that's the turning down the noise and turning up your inner voice, because that's the one that's really looking out for you, right? It's truly knowing what's best for you, even if in the moment you don't know why or how. that's where the trust comes in, because if we knew the why and the how, we'd already be doing it. So the trust is, I don't know why, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I trust that I'm being guided. I know with a capital K that my voice is guiding me to make decisions that are going to serve me. And I also know with a capital K that when I look back, I will see how it all came together.
Yes. And it also can be, these deep levels of transformation, guys. And it can also just be really fun to connect with your inner voice and make fun decisions like, what kind of coffee, Dan? I know you're like, what kind of coffee am I going to make this morning? Right? It's like, there's all these little decisions that can make your life and your everyday experience so much more fun when you're making them from your inner voice. And it will surprise you too. Sometimes it will surprise you. And speaking of coffee, I had this really wild expansion of my inner voice the other day. I told Dana about this. I was like, this is insane. And this is because I am opening myself to this practice. But it's little things. I picked out a coffee mug and I was going to pour some coffee for my husband. And something told me, the literal booming voice of God that I thought I was supposed to experience the first time, that said, but I don't want this one to break. And there was no reason for me to believe that it was going to break. It was just this gut feeling that immediately turned to a voice that said, put it back. And I did. And I picked a different mug that was replaceable. And I gave it to my husband. And the next morning, it broke. And I was just like, oh my goodness, that's insane. I had no idea that connecting with my inner voice could lead to these fun little, what I would have considered coincidences. But really, it was a fissure in the universe that I got a glimpse inside because I trusted my subconscious and inner voice, which is what connects you to the universe. And it was just wow, if I can predict a coffee mug breaking, what else can I do? What other decisions can I make that will bring me happiness in the future? It's really just, it isn't always a hard decision. Sometimes it's a fun decision. And then those fun decisions help you when you make those hard decisions.
Exactly. And, the fun decisions, living with this in everyday life, it's fun. I mean, you can use it to pick out the clothes that you wear. You won't always know, right? Here's the deal. You won't always know since we aren't actively, at least to our knowledge, living in parallel universes. I can't jump from one parallel to the next. So I can't always know that, for example, if I choose the white shoes instead of the red shoes, that I will end up spilling something on my white shoes that will stain. And if I was wearing red shoes, it wouldn't stain, right? We can't always know that. But we were on a hike this weekend and I was leading the way. And typical Dana, I joke that my inner guidance system is always right, but my inner GPS, the more specific one, is always wrong, aka I'm horrible with directions. So somehow I was leading us home from our hike, and this was with my family and my husband, John, and my brother and his girlfriend. And we missed a turn, and I'm like, no, this feels right. This feels right. This feels right. Well, guess what freaking happened? Where I was guided, because I was like, this is right. We almost literally ran into an elk mama and her baby. And it was so cool. And also, if I was followed my mind and said, no, turn around, we wouldn't have seen her. And I had said just earlier that day, I said, I want to see, not an elk, I'm sorry, a moose, guys, a moose and a baby moose and a mama moose. I had said that morning, I want to see a moose on this trip. We were in Grand Lake. And guess what? I was brought to see the freaking moose that I asked for.
That's insane.
And I was following one of my guidance systems. It wasn't the directionally challenged one. It was the one that was taking us to see the moose that I asked for. But, it's little things like that. This is why it's so much more fun to have fun with life, because then it started to rain. And as we were walking that way, we realized we were going the wrong direction. It started to rain. And it's if we had gotten mad and frustrated and what are we doing wrong? We have to turn around. Instead of continuing going, we would have been in an energetic mismatch, right? To see the beautiful moose and the little baby. And when we're riding the wave of life a little bit more and following that guidance and having fun, it's okay if you make a wrong turn, guys. It's okay. If you're following this guidance along the way, you can find more joy and peace and fun moments that make the whole journey more enjoyable. Because as we know, right, it's not just about Katie moving back to Alabama and having her baby on her timeline. It's about her having this trust in herself and following the journey and enjoying the whole part of it, not just the result. And that's what following that guidance allows you to do, because it's like you're playing a game. You're like, ooh, should I do this or should I do this? And then you get to play with the nudge based on your inner voice type that you're guided to do. And then you get to see what the outcome is. And with the small decisions, it's really fun. It's like, well, because often like it'll be weird stuff. Like I'll leave my AirPod out of the case. And then I'll be leaving the room and then I'll just hear this nudge, like, put it back. And I'm like, and that's an easy enough thing to ignore, right? And be like, I'll put it back. But now I'm at the place where I trust it. Or like I'm going to bed and I just want to go to bed. And then I hear the noise like, do an energy clearing or do a meditation. And I'm like, I don't feel like it. Or floss your teeth. That happened last night. I just wanted to go to bed. And then it was like, floss your teeth. I'm like, man. But now I just listen because I'm like, I trust that there's a reason for these stupid nudges. They're not stupid, but it's just like, I hear them now and I'm like way more willing to listen.
Yeah. And it's once again, it's that internal map that is inside ourselves, to go off this analogy of being on a hike and you taking a wrong turn. There's just an internal map inside us that there are destinations and sites and experiences that are off the grid that only our internal map can guide us to.
That might be our audio clip for this episode. Wisdom from Katie. That's why you're the most amazing. And guess what? That was at 10101.
Oh my God, the alignment.
Sorry, guys. I can't resist it. Katie, you're amazing. Do you have anything else that you want to share about anything that, you've dropped so many wisdom nuggets and you've just shared so openly and transparently, that's a word, about your journey and using this. And I just so appreciate you being so candid with us about all of this, because I think that's what people need to hear. Like, your experience is not my experience. And yet, as we both continue down this journey, we get to share how we're using this tool, this powerhouse wisdom within ourselves to, change the trajectory of your life.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I'm just grateful to be able to share this experience and to be a part of this community and to have met you, Dana, that ultimately is what led me to be able to have these experiences. There are people that you meet that transform your life in a way that you just can't predict. And so I want to express my gratitude, one, for you coming into my life, and two, for opening me to this on such a deep level. And if there's anyone out there who's listening to this because they want to get to know their inner voice more and they're curious about the Tuning In membership, I encourage you to listen to that nudge and to trust that nudge and to trust what we now know after this episode is your inner voice, and to allow it into your life. That if there's a part of you that is here because you are interested in this, that is because your inner voice is quite literally screaming at you to say, please hear me. Please listen to me. Here's a podcast episode about me. Maybe after this, you will finally know me.
That's so beautiful, Katie. Katie's inner voice is also the one I think I've shared before, everyone, but her inner voice when we did our deep session, it's so wise, right? It's talking to us. Her inner voice said she'll be wildly successful when she listens to her inner voice. And I said, inner voice, what does that mean for Katie? He said, dancing in the kitchen.
And what's so crazy about that is for years, my husband knows I am happiest when I am making up random songs to our dog and I am dancing. So it was this like, it just came up out of nowhere. This like, I will be wildly successful. And what that will look like is me dancing and singing in the kitchen.
In your gorgeous new kitchen.
It's really pretty.
I have
so
kitchen envy, guys. I'm like, can I come visit you in your gorgeous house and like maybe live there 1 month a year because it's so beautiful. Your manifested inner voice house.
We do have a guest wing at this point because we only are using like 2 out of our 4 bedrooms at this point. We're going to get to grow a family in here, and that includes you in here. But yeah, it was just, I remember that moment. And when it came out, going, wow, you know, like, because success is something different for everyone. And for me, that's the ultimate manifestation of happiness. Knowing I am truly happy because I'm making up some ridiculous song to my dog and I'm dancing in the kitchen. I never made the connection that like, yeah, success was happiness to me, and that's going to look, and I'm going to accomplish that. And probably what I now know is a very different way than what most people might. And just trusting that, and that my voice knows that, and therefore the universe knows that.
Exactly. And that's why it's so powerful. Like Katie said, is if you're feeling the nudge, like don't write it off. I mean, that is what we're here to do, is being able to tap into that and get that new perspective and really step into being that version of yourself, being, living, operating from that inner guidance, the inner voice within you that is you, not just the mind. It's just another part of you. It's just another station that we get to tune to. And how freeing and delightful for Katie to experience that something her mind has been so attached to, success, wildly successful, can mean something so different. And she aligned with the message, right? It's not like it's telling her success is to go live in a cave. You know, your inner voice will talk to you and it will share that with you, which is why you have to be able to tap in so that you can learn that different perspective. You can learn what it means for you and only for you. You know, it's your life, people. It's your show. And let your inner voice guide you to the success that is for you.
And what's even crazier is that you just kind of jogged my memories. It's like, I used to believe that for me, success meant lots of money, right? And so I joined the Tuning In podcast when I did not have lots of money. Like, it was definitely something that I was like, oh man, you know, like, I'm going to have to put this on the credit card. I'm going to have to try to hide it from Zach or explain it away to Zach. But by joining, I actually did reach the level of success that I was looking for. And it wasn't monetary value. It was the happiness and dancing in my brand new, beautiful kitchen. Success. Because I trusted, it gave me the success I needed, which was to listen and align with what was meant for me. And then I finally understood that I was successful. And the peace that comes with that is priceless.
Yeah, more tears, more chills. And I think with that, Katie has dropped her final wisdom bomb. You are so amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your beautiful journey, your continued thriving. Have you here today and to have you as a friend and a coach and a confidant and a messaging guru, and every piece of you is something I hold very dearly. So thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Dana. You're bringing me to tears because I could repeat all of those things right back at you. I am just grateful to be here and grateful to share and grateful for the people that you're going to impact and the lives that are going to change as a result of you being you.
Thank you so much.
I just love you.
Guys. If you want to talk to Katie, we'll put her in the show notes. She's not very active on Instagram, so I'll tag her. But
now.
Look, she's incubating, so
yeah, I'm molting into my final form as a human vending machine. That's what I've been telling myself.
Exactly. But I'll put her Instagram and website on the at Katie Carter Huey.
I believe that's correct? It. No, K Carter Huey at K Carter Carter Huey Huey in the show notes.
On the gram. You can find her there. You can tag her and share your favorite takeaway from her share with this episode. Thank you, everybody. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't joined the challenge yet, it's alignful.com/challenge. And you will be getting an invite soon to join the Tuning In membership if you feel called to do so. See you next week. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.